All right. You guys know I am not one for conspiracy theories, but if you can't hear me right now, I'm going to punch somebody. We've tried this live stream a couple of times and the audio is not working. I'm on a different computer right now, so this has got to work. If this doesn't work, then I will officially think that YouTube has it in for me. Because, all right, it sounds like it's working. A few people are saying it's working. We're getting a thumbs up over here. All right. So, I mean, Jesus Christ. I'm talking about how YouTube has told us, they're telling us that there's a bug with our channel, so people are being unsubscribed. And you guys are telling me you're being unsubscribed. We have a whole other group of people that are telling us they're not getting our videos on their feed. And then twice I tried to do a live hangout on my computer the same way we've always done it, and the audio didn't work twice. So I'm on a different computer now, so I'm not exactly sure just what happened there. But all right, well, we'll just chalk it up to non-conspiracy. But anyway, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you click that little bell button. So that you get all of our notifications. Now I can start telling you all the things that I wanted to tell you and get you caught up with everything. Man, nothing is easy. Let's tweet out that this new link. All right. Okay. So cool. Hi everybody. That was insane. I just did mime. You all just watch me do mime for 8 minutes. What if I told you my deepest, darkest secrets? Who knows? All right. So if you didn't see the video this morning that we posted on YouTube, I'm very excited. We got a lot of good news and we are expanding the Rubin Report. A few things fell into place over the last couple of weeks, and we were able to find a place, and we will be building a home studio. We got an awesome garage, nice high ceilings that we're going to be able to build a full-on studio to unlimitedly be able to do whatever we want, whenever we want. Our situation since we've gone independent in June, it's been great. But the studio that we're at, they have other things that are shooting there. We can't just be there all the time doing whatever we want. We have time limits and there are cost reasons that we just can't shoot all the time. But now we are going to build out our own studio. So I took out a massive loan and, I finally got ahead in life, and then I thought, all right, let's try this again. So I'm very excited. So starting next week, we are going to double the amount of shows that we're doing. We'll be doing 2 interviews per week. And we're going to do that as long as we can. But the key to this is we got to hit this 30,000 thing on Patreon. We've looked at the budget, and we have to build out the studio. So it's just basically a garage at the moment. We got to soundproof it and light it and get electric in there. All kinds. There's a lot of stuff that we have to build out. And you guys have been great to us. So as you know, we are fan funded on Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/RubinReport or RubinReport.com/donate. And you can donate whatever you can, $1, $2, people do hundreds of dollars, whatever it is. And depending on what you do on Patreon, you hit different awards. Anyway, I'm going to give everybody shout outs. Anyone that donates while I am live right now on the YouTube, you will get a shout out right now live. I just did one of these on Facebook, and I hope people jumped in. And by the way, if you donate while I am live right now, if you donate $50 or more on Patreon, I will personally thank you on Skype today. You just send us your Skype name. I will thank you on today. That's 50 on Patreon. Or if you donate 100 on PayPal, I will thank you on Skype after this. Personally, you and me, one-on-one. And we're doing this all week, by the way. So today, it's just the initial. I'm going to answer all your questions. We can talk about the election, all that kind of stuff. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a happy hour situation. We might do this Patron for Patreon thing that we did last time, which got me wasted because I had to take shots every $250 thing. I ended up doing like 6-7 shots in 3 hours. It was nuts. But I think we'll do a happy hour thing. Then on Wednesday is the debate. So we'll live stream before and after that. And then Thursday and Friday, we got a couple other tricks up our sleeve. So it is patreon.com/RubinReport or RubinReport.com/donate. And by the way, for those of you that are part of this, what's really cool is that, we get a lot of email from young people and, from people that don't have a ton of money or whatever it is. So for those of you that do donate, not only are you donating to help us build the show, but you're allowing the show not to go behind a paywall, which is, I guess, ultimately what we would have to do. And you're letting other people get it for free. So that's actually very cool. So a shout out to Tyler, who just donated on PayPal, and Sean, who just donated on Patreon. Thank you guys. All right, cool. So if you want to jump in the comment section, you can ask questions. My guys are going to shout some questions out at me. We can talk politics. We can talk election. We can talk life. We can talk about the expansion of the business. I didn't realize really when we did this thing back in June that, I was going to end up running. I want to do what I'm doing on the show. The stuff that you see me doing, that's the stuff I care about. Now we got a production company, and there's accountants involved and lawyers, and health insurance and Obamacare and all kinds of other shit. But it's very cool. We're building something cool, and I think those of you that watch and understand what I'm trying to do, which is talk to people from all sides. Yes, I focused more on trying to clean up the left because I consider those my people, and I've been really disappointed in watching what's happened to liberalism over the past year or so, because it has regressed. Liberals that should stand for free speech and liberty and be about the individual really have regressed into this collective mindset and the oppression Olympics and this whole thing. A lot of people will criticize me. They'll say, well, now you've had Cernovich on, and you've had Milo, and you had Paul Joseph Watson, and they're right-wing maniacs or alt-righters or other buzzwords. And it's like, that means you're in it with them. And I'm like, guys, no, that means I talk to them. And I do have friends in my own life that have beliefs. And I've also had plenty of progressives like John Fugelsang and Ariva Martin and Michael Ian Black and Jimmy Dore and other people on. And I've had Sam Harris, who was talking about why Trump would be a disaster. And the very next week, I had Dinesh D'Souza, who was talking about why Hillary would be a disaster. So I'm really trying to bring on a wide range of people, and I try not to be too judgy. I think that what I try to do, sometimes people say, well, Dave, you should be more combative. What I try to do is I let my guests speak, because I'm a firm believer that if you let someone really expand on their thoughts, that eventually if their thoughts are shitty, it's like giving them a rope, and eventually they start just tying it around their neck and hanging themselves. So what would be the purpose of doing a show where I just fight with people every week or yell at people? But that said, one of the things that we're going to do, so we're expanding to 2 interviews a week. We're going to do way more live streaming. So first off, it doesn't work because of our shitty Time Warner Wi-Fi. So in the new place, we already ordered it. We're getting fiber optic cables. So we're going to make this thing state of the art. It's going to be really cool. So we'll have live streaming capabilities, and we're going to try to do more with that. I'd love to eventually start doing some like weekly news wrap up. I've told you guys before, I don't want to do the daily news thing. I think it becomes minutia and you start chasing stories just for clicks. I don't want to do that. But we can just do so much more. And if I get into a Twitter fight with somebody, I can say, you know what? How about I'll jump into my studio down the hall and we can hash it out right now. So there's so many cool things we can do. We can do 3-hour interviews if we want. We can really expand this. I mean, this is the final step. I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly, but this is truly the final step to us becoming fully independent, beholden to no network executive or anyone yelling in my ear. We will be beholden to you guys, the audience, and the real beauty of that, you guys are as politically diverse as I would want you to be. So it's not like I have all people that are all Trump people giving us money on Patreon, or all Hillary people. You guys are all over the place too. So that allows me to do what I think is right. The greatest gift that you could possibly give me. If you think of this as a gift that you're giving me, that's what you're giving me.
Let's do some quick shout outs.
Okay, so we're gonna do a couple shout outs, and then you guys can ask me questions, election, whatever you want to do. You ask me some personal stuff, whatever works. I want to thank Jake on Patreon. I want to thank another Jake on Patreon. I think we had a Jake in Facebook too. 3 Jakes. I want to thank Etienne, I hope I pronounced your name right, on Patreon, who gave $50. And I want to thank Mark on Patreon. And
so you can tell Etienne that the details are in the description, since she gave 50.
So anyone, as I said, that anyone that does 50 or more on Patreon or 100 or more on PayPal, I'm going to thank you personally on Skype after this. The details are right below, so Etienne, you can check that out.
All right, let's start throwing some questions.
All right, let's throw some questions at me. What do you got for me?
On YouTube, he says, "Hi Dave, I'm proud to have been on the ground floor. When was the breaking point for you that you thought that the Rubin Report was something needed?"
All right, so the question was from George, and thank you for the nice words, George. And basically, he was saying, when was the breaking point for when I thought this whole thing was needed? You know, and we've talked about this with a few guests that I've had on, but there were a couple moments where my own political awakening was happening, because as you guys know, I was on TYT. I guess I consider myself a progressive, but I always thought of myself as a liberal, and I was in that progressive world. That's fine. There were a few moments. Obviously, the Sam Harris, Van Affleck moment on Real Time, and the gross and racist thing, and how the next day suddenly the onus was on Bill Maher, who had been the standard bearer of the left, because Affleck called him and Sam Harris racist. The onus was suddenly on Bill Maher to prove that he wasn't racist, even though he had been for every liberal cause everywhere. And I saw the way the left was throwing Bill Maher and Sam Harris, especially Sam, obviously, under the bus. And all Sam did was quote some Pew polls. So that was the beginning of it. The thing was huge also for me. That's when I saw the left again. They were upset that people drew cartoons, and they seemed to be more outraged about that than the actual dead people, than the actual people, the cartoonists the satirists who were murdered. And then a series of other things, how it just seemed like the left was judging everybody that they didn't agree with. Everyone that the progressives didn't agree with was a homophobe and an Islamophobe and a racist and a bigot and whatever. And I just thought it's just sloppy thinking. And what I try not to do, even though I criticize, obviously, people on both sides, but I try not to demonize everyone's intentions. And that's why, look, I've even used the phrase regressive left, or talked about less regressive left. I've talked about the regressive a little bit less lately, because I want people to realize, because people are waking up, and I don't want them to think that ultimately we're enemies, because I want the left to be better. That's why I've focused on the left. You know, think about it. If I was just another guy screaming about the right all day long, there's a gajillion people doing it. No one's adding anything. But I think that what I can add is that I want the left to be more liberal. I want liberalism to be more liberal. I want us to use logic and reason, classical liberal principles. I want us to have a certain set of beliefs about liberty and about the individual that allow us to grow a society properly. And let's talk about the role of government and what taxes should be for, and why we shouldn't nation build, but we should have a strong defense. I mean, I'm happy to you know, share any of my political thoughts with you guys for whatever that's worth. So that was the breaking point. A few of those things at once, but yeah, the final snap was about a year and a half ago. I just couldn't take it anymore. I saw something so rotten in the left. As Ben Shapiro says, and Ben is obviously a conservative, but he says the left loves feelings over facts. And that started to become obvious to me. You can't just judge everything by your gut emotion. You have to judge it on facts. And that's what I would try to bring to what I've tried to do with this show. And I hope I'm doing a pretty decent job of it. All right, you guys are jumping all over Patreon, which is awesome. So I want to thank Derek, who just donated on PayPal, Sam on Patreon, Lawton on Patreon, Joseph on Patreon, Eric on Patreon, Bob on Patreon, Eduardo on Patreon. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. You're giving us the budget. We're going to build this studio out. As I said, we hit 30,000 on Patreon. We can wire this thing. We can light this thing. We can insulate it, et cetera, et cetera. And who knows what we can do. I can live stream every day. You know, I'm live streaming on my IKEA couch with my IKEA table behind me and my IKEA blanket. But we'll be in studio. We'll be able to do whatever we want as it. We can do longer interviews, more news stuff, all kinds of cool stuff. What do we got?
What is your guest wish list, like your dream guest?
My dream guest wish. So there's a lot of people, obviously. I would love to have Bill Maher for several reasons. I have more disagreements, actually, with Bill now than probably at any time in the past. Because I do sense that he goes a little too much to this, all the Trump people are racist. I'm trying not to do that. Are there some racists? Yes. Are there some racists on the left? Yes. But I try not to do that. I think you guys know that. But I would love to talk to Bill about the Affleck thing, but about his political evolution. I've been stand-up. I've met him a couple times. I've met with the producers over there. We're trying to get me on that show, so hopefully it'll happen. So I'd love to have him. I would love to have Thomas Sowell, who we've gone back and forth with his people. You know, he's 86 years old. He's up in Stanford. Doesn't sound like he does that many interviews these days, but we're doing the back and forth, and hopefully it'll happen. I would love to have Larry David. I'd love to have Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, you know, I love talking to comics, obviously. Of course, I would love to. I mean, this goes without saying. I would love to have Trump, and I would love to have Clinton. And I'll tell you what I would do with both Trump and Clinton, to show you that I would be fair and I would be honest and just, is I would interview them both the exact same way. I would ask them the exact same 10 questions, and we would not edit for content. You know, Hillary's been doing all these things where, you know, she goes on Ellen, or she goes on Two Ferns, or she went on Steve Harvey, and they pre-plan the questions and all this stuff. And it's like, these aren't even remotely close to interviews. Now, you guys know my style. I would not be the most combative, but I think you can ask them certain questions in a way that you would get a lot more out of them than just this pre-packaged nonsense. So, of course, I would love to have them. I would love to have somebody like Jake Tapper on CNN, who, you guys know my feelings about mainstream media and CNN. It's pretty terrible, but I think Jake's doing a decent enough job. He's trying. You know, it's very easy for all of us that are in the online media. It's very easy for all of us to shit all over everybody all day, and, you know, turn on CNN and be like, that guy's a fucking idiot, and this one. But there are some good people there, of course. You know, my friend Don Lemon, who I've had on the show, is on there. I think he's trying to have honest, civil conversation. Of course, each channel has a couple people that I think are decent. Even Bill O'Reilly, I'll watch every now and again, who I disagree with on so much. And I've been on his show, by the way, and he compared my views to Hitler. Not a joke. But even him, I do find that he's calling out both sides and trying to be a decent arbiter for the most part. So you can't just dismiss everybody. And I would never sit here and tell you that I'm the end all be all to everything by any stretch. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to have conversations with people all over the map. You guys will see on Wednesday, we have Lawrence Krauss on, who's an astrophysicist. The guy's a genius. Really is against Trump because of science, because he thinks that Trump simply doesn't have the mental capacity to deal with huge scientific issues, and really lays into him. And then, you know what? The week after, I'm going to have Hillary Clinton. I'm going to have Hillary Rosen on, who's a big Clinton supporter. And then I'm going to have some Trump people. And yeah, we'll keep mixing it up. All right, what do we got?
Why is building a great studio so important? Rather than trying to spend that effort, trying to get access to more people, trying to navigate time schedules and organize debates, etc.
So why is building a studio so important? Basically, we need, like, it's the final step. Like, we need unlimited ability to shoot whenever we want, whenever we, that's the only thing that we have now that's separating us, right? I can do this. I'm sitting at a computer on a box. You should see my rigged setup here. It looks ridiculous. But like, we need to have that studio so that I can do either, my goal would be, look, if we can get the numbers to line up right and the YouTube revs coming in properly and all that, I would love to be doing interviews every day, or be doing some more news stuff, or some combination thereof, or we could shoot all kinds of other things. Like, what we need basically is the unfettered access. We have unfettered access to you right now, even though YouTube's telling me there's a bug and a lot of you are being unsubscribed, and apparently some of the stuff's not going to the feed and the audio wasn't working, blah, blah, blah. What we need is that it's just the final key to freedom. So if you believe in the things that I'm talking about, and you think that this show has helped conversation, which that, you know, I get that more than anything else. It's people saying, you know, I've shown your show to somebody that I disagree with. I get emails from Christian conservatives saying, you know, I can't stand all these liberals, but I like what you do. And I get emails from liberal people saying, you know, this show has helped me breach the gap with some conservatives or whatever. We just need our own home to do it at. So the studio that we're at, which has been great, but we have to pay them every time we use it. So it became, for each time, you know, the way YouTube Rev works, it becomes eventually, it's not financially sound to just keep doing more and more and more, because sometimes the cost of the studio is actually more than we can ever earn on the particular video. So this will allow us to get ahead and really fully own it ourselves. As I said, I had to take out a huge loan to do it, but I'm confident in this, and we know we're building properly, and I hope you'll join us for the ride. So anyone that donates over 50 on Patreon will get a live shout out right now. We're over 100 on PayPal. And what do we got?
This comment is from Patreon, who we're giving top priority to. Anybody that asks through Patreon. Please get James O'Keefe on ASAP. You must have seen this video today. Tons of people are asking in the chat.
So the comment was about James O'Keefe in this video. I saw a few minutes of it because obviously I've had a bit of a busy day. Look, it sounds like goes to one of those things where it's so hard to know who to trust these days, right? You guys know I do not trust the mainstream media, and I wish they'd be, you know, give a little, I don't want false equivalence, but I want a little more balance when it comes to, if you're going to talk about Trump and pussy all day long, you got to also address WikiLeaks. It doesn't have to be 50-50. That wouldn't make sense either. Just putting an artificial, we have to do half bad and half, you know, whatever. But there's such a lack of trust in everything. So I did watch some of the video. Yeah, I guess at some level you have to question some of his political motives. But it does sound like the Democrats have intentionally inflamed violence at Trump things to make it seem like the Trump supporters are more violent than they are. What I can tell you is that from the one time that I was at anything that you could be resembled a Trump rally, which was when I spoke at UCLA with Milo, there were hundreds and hundreds of kids there. And there were about, I don't know, 500 or 600 trying to get into the event. And then there were another maybe 100 outside protesting it. The protesters were the ones that were violent. They were throwing garbage cans and spitting on people, and they created a human chain so no one could get in. So they're not against walls if they're creating it themselves. And they were pounding on the door to try to get in while we were talking. They called it a bomb threat. I mean, they were doing extremely illiberal things. Meanwhile, and it's like, whether you agree or disagree with Milo, it's like, here's a bleach blonde British gay guy. Let the guy speak, and then, you know what, a minute later, you know, retort his speech with your own. Do a counter protest outside. But you can't stop people from speaking. And this is why I've been so disappointed with the left. And that's why when we talk about the trigger warnings and safe spaces and all of these things, we're creating a generation of people that are so afraid of hearing other ideas that eventually you never want to hear another idea because you're so morally right. That is the scariest thing there is. We need to have these conversations. So It's a big mess. So I will watch the full O'Keefe thing, and I'll comment. I'll comment on it tomorrow when I've seen the full thing. All right, just let's do a quick radio reset. You guys, most of you probably know I was on Sirius XM for a couple of years, so radio reset, just letting you know what we're doing. So we are raising funds. We're trying to hit 30,000 on Patreon. We did not think that this was going to happen so quickly, where we'd be able to build our own studio, but a few things fell into place, and we found a place that is just perfect for what we need. And you guys have given us the budget to do the show the way we want. And as I said in the video this morning, if CNN came to me right now and said, we'll give you $1 million to do this show, I would not do it. We're doing something that's so cool. This connection is real, and it's spreading. There's something so awesome happening here, and I'm so proud of it. So you can go to patreon.com/Rubin Report or rubinreport.com/donate. If you do 50 on Patreon, I'll give you a live, I'll Skype with you after to thank you. And if you do 100 on PayPal, I'll Skype with you after to thank you. And we're doing this all week, by the way. So we're doing this today on Facebook and YouTube. Tomorrow we're going to do a happy hour, so I'm going to do some shots of Patron for Patreon. I think last time we did it was I did a shot at every 250 bucks. I ended up doing like 7 shots in an hour or something. It was a rough night, but I do it. I'll do it. And yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff.
Why are we trying to get to 30K?
And we're trying to get to 30K so we can build this studio. You know, it's not cheap, obviously, to build a studio, but this will fully 100% be ours. We will have unfiltered, unfettered access to the studio. We can do longer interviews. We can do more interviews. We can do news segments. We're gonna have a green screen area. I mean, we're really this really is the final step to doing more. And by the way, you know, David and Amira, we're a small team here, and I should thank all of you that constantly email me offering to work for free. We've had a zillion people offering to work for free. I've had people offer to move across the country to come work for us. So my hope, though, is that soon we'll be able to start hiring some people. At 30, I think we're going to get there. We'll hire an editor. We've had people doing graphics for us that we pay as contractors. But I really we can really expand this thing now. So it's very cool. All right, cool. So I'm going to give a couple shout outs. I want to thank Brad on Patreon, Andrea on Patreon, Neil on Patreon. Neil, let's start that over. Got a little ahead of myself. Brad on Patreon, Andrea on Patreon, Neil on PayPal, Luke on Patreon, Jonathan on Patreon, and Gianluca on Patreon. Thank you to you guys. You're giving us the budget to build the show out properly. And as I said, the cool thing is that, you know, some people don't have a little extra income. And if you do, by supporting us, you're actually keeping this show free for other people. And that's what it's about. It's about spreading ideas. So that's what's very cool.
All right, here's a question from Patreon. It's from Viral Liberty. I really don't like Trump, but I feel like Hillary will start World War III. Do you think we can ally with Russia if Trump is elected?
I really don't like Trump, but I think Hillary will start World War III. Can we ally with Russia if Trump is elected? So this Russia thing, look, I did a video last week. What's the situation with Russia? Because it's very obvious that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have propaganda flying every which direction about Russia. Look, is Russia working with WikiLeaks to affect our election? I don't know that for a fact, but it seems like there could be some collusion. Now, at the same time, Democrats are not claiming that the emails that are being leaked are not legit. So there's two separate issues here. One issue related to WikiLeaks is the damning stuff that's in the emails. It does seem like the Clinton campaign has coordinated with the New York Times, with Politico, with CNN, and a few other places. It does seem that there's some pay to play. If you give the foundation a certain amount of money, you might get an ambassadorship or some other types of things. So there does seem to be some of that. Then at the same time, is it possible that WikiLeaks either is in cahoots with the Russian government or is somehow secretly working with the Trump campaign or something? Because obviously they are very anti-Hillary. Now they're against state power as a general rule. So Clinton happens to be the one candidate out of these two who's, oh, Emma wants a little camera time, I guess. Clinton happens to be the one that's been in the government all these years, so they have more shit on her than they do on Trump. So that just works to her disadvantage in this case. Also, she did some really sloppy stuff with her emails and classified stuff, which we know about, and, you know, destroying emails and iPads and bleaching things and the whole thing. So my feeling at the moment is that it does seem that the Democrats have more of a reason to be hawkish on Russia because Russia or WikiLeaks or whatever you want to say has more shit on them. So oddly, I ought to be at war with Russia. I don't think Russia really wants to be at war with us, but there does seem to be some sort of new Cold War brewing, but it seems to be coming from the Democrats. And you know, what I said earlier is that if WikiLeaks really has some serious stuff on Hillary that's going to keep getting leaked, the real risk is that what if they announce some major bombshell the day before the election, or even worse, the day after the election? So what if she gets elected and then they announce some really huge scandal, or they're able to blackmail her? Look, you guys know my feelings about conspiracy theories. As Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I don't like going down that route, but we have to, that's the problem. When we don't have a media that seems like we can trust it, if you have a brain and you're a logical thinker, you have to try to find some truth in it for yourself, I think. And hopefully the truth that you find is the real truth out there. All right, so what do we got?
Are you building toward a network where you can enable others who speak honestly to express their views on their own shows?
Are you heading towards a network where you can connect with other people and help other people expand their views and all that kind of stuff? We're thinking about it. I mean, now, we didn't know how quick this was going to happen. It's incredible. I mean, we just left Aura in June and did the independent thing. I did not think that 5 months later we'd be in a position to do the home studio. But once we do this, that's the other thing. We're going to build this thing out so that hopefully I'll be able to bring in other YouTubers. I can let them use the studio. We can figure out other ways of doing network things. Maybe we'll become an MCN, which is a multi-channel network on YouTube. I mean, we might be able to license the show to some networks. I mean, there's so much stuff that we can do here. And by the way, the reason that this is working, is that there's not a home for this. There really isn't a home for it. I mean, think about if I was trying to do this and I was on CNN. Would that make any sense? Would it make any sense if I was on Fox News or on MSNBC? I don't think any of those things would make any sense. So we can figure, there is a political movement brewing. You know, everyone's talking about, they talked about the Bernie movement, which Hillary basically killed and the DNC killed. They talk about the Trump movement, but there's another movement brewing here of people that are disaffected on both sides, that really do want answers. That are liberals that can look at a conservative and say, you know, I disagree with you maybe on tax policy, or I disagree with you on abortion, but I know you're not really the enemy, and a conservative that can look at a liberal and say, you know, I know you want maybe more in terms of social safety net or something like that. Or maybe you're for legalizing marijuana and I'm not, but I know you're not the enemy. And I do think there's a new center developing. This is going to take time, but you know what? On the show, who's obviously supporting Trump now, and who really laid out some of the tactics of Trump of why it's working. He said that out of this chaos, some opportunity will arise, and I think that's the opportunity. But it will only be there if we grab it. So there's something happening here. We got to grab it. That's the key to the whole thing. All right, couple quick shout outs. Nathan on Patreon, thank you. Lewis on PayPal, thank you. And Kevin on Patreon, thank you guys. Appreciate it. You're giving us the budget to go ahead and build this show the best way we know how. And it's been amazing. It really is amazing. You know, I wish, if I just, here, I'm just looking at my phone for 1 second, show you that I'm not making this up. The amount of emails that we get at the moment, can you see this right there? I have 8,000, what does that say? 8,935 emails in my inbox right now. It just went up. It went up 5. Because you guys are emailing me constantly, and Twitter used to be fun for me. It's becoming like, it's so out of control that I can barely look at my mentions anymore. But this is good, because it means something's happening here. It means something's happening here. And we're able to partner up with the right people that we want to partner up with when we can, and really control what we're doing here. All right.
Are you worried by the increased censorship on YouTube? If so, would you ever think about starting your own site?
Are you worried about the increased censorship on YouTube, or would you ever consider starting your own site? All right, so this is big, and I've tried not to make a huge issue out of it because I don't know exactly what's going on. And it's funny because so much these days feels like a conspiracy theory, and if you want to go down that route, there's no end to it, right? So look, here's the issue with YouTube. YouTube has told me, I have emails from, one from this morning, that there is a bug on our channel, and that's why people are being unsubscribed. We also know that our feed isn't working properly. So like our video with Zoltan Istvan from last Friday, for the first 6 hours, it had like 80 views. Like, it just didn't go out to the feed. They've confirmed that this is hitting certain channels. They won't tell us what other channels it's going to. They won't tell us how long it's going to take. They won't address any of it publicly. So do I think that they're possibly going after my political beliefs, I guess anything's possible. But again, I don't want to go down the conspiracy route. But, you know, there are other issues related to YouTube because we know that they're demonetizing things that they don't like. So, for example, all of our videos with Douglas Murray, who's the most brilliant, he's Hitchens too. This guy's incredible. They said, no, this is not, you can't make money on that. So that's another reason why Patreon is so important. YouTube doesn't pay out a lot per video. It's like $2 per 1,000 views or something. But by doing Patreon, I don't have to worry. We don't have to do topics based on how much we're going to make. You know what I mean? And we don't have to do clickbait. I'm very proud of the way we've treated this channel. Look at our videos. Look at the way we title things and tag them and our thumbnails. I treat this the way that I would want news and information to be treated. So we know that we can game the system. And by the way, we used to do it years ago when we first started to just try to get more clicks and all that. We don't do it anymore. I think that can work against us in numbers, but I think it works for us in terms of feeling that I'm doing the right thing. So anyway, so I don't want to put it at a conspiracy. They're dealing with, I don't know, they got giant servers, and I know these problems are affecting other channels. I know my friend Dave Cullen, who's doing his channel. I know he's been hit too. So I don't know that it's politically motivated, and I don't even want to think about that. And I love being on YouTube, and I love the community that we've built. But that is the key. That's why Patreon is so great. Even if I was being totally manipulated and the algorithm was set up to hurt us, if we're okay on Patreon, it really doesn't matter. Yeah.
This is Malcolm on Patreon. Dave, why do you think it is that third-party candidates always go for the presidency rather than build a party that gets elected into Congress or become governor?
That's a great question. So Malcolm said, why do they always go for the presidency and don't become a smaller party first and go local and all that? So I've said this many times. This has been one of the things that's been so disappointing about the Libertarian Party. I think the ideas that they have, the ideas of social liberalism, because you're for small government, you wouldn't care if someone smokes weed, certainly not if someone smokes medicinal marijuana, if they're sick and they can do something to help themselves. I don't know how anyone could be against that. Can you imagine? What right would you have? And if any of you are against what I'm saying now, please let me know. But forget what your political position is. If someone was sick with something, you have cancer, you have Parkinson's, you have Alzheimer's, you have AIDS, whatever it is, and you could smoke something or ingest something or take it in cookie form or whatever it is to make yourself feel better, what right would another person or the government have to tell you not to do that? That's crazy. So a libertarian, meaning a libertarian, you may not care about gay people per se, but you would say, wait a minute, what does that have to do with the state? If two men want to enter a contract and if two women want to enter a contract, or a man and a woman or whatever else, then that has nothing to do with the state. So a lot of the things that I believe in from a liberal perspective can also be rationalized from a libertarian perspective, which I think is really great, because then it shows that liberals and libertarians shouldn't be against each other. Even if you don't agree with why you've come to the same conclusion, if you come to the same conclusion, that's actually pretty cool. So one of my disappointments with the Libertarian Party is that you're completely right, Malcolm. They have to be a party. Why aren't people running on these ideas of social liberalism and fiscal conservatism, right? We don't care what you do in your private life. I don't care what you do in your private life. I hope you don't care what I do in my private life. And then at the same time, be for lower taxes, not for adventurous wars, but have a strong defense so that we don't have to use it. And let the free market do as much as it can. I'm not a full libertarian in that I want no social safety net, because I think you have to have one. I think you have to have some social services, and I'm not against helping people with health insurance. But all of those are just the little details. But the libertarian ideas should have more traction right now. And that's why I wanted Gary Johnson, at least in the debate. Again, I've said this now 1,000 times. Gary Johnson was not a great libertarian, certainly not a great candidate. I like him personally. I had him on the show and I've chatted with him. And he's a nice guy. If he was sitting right here, I put my arm around him and we could smoke a joint, but he wasn't a great example. He wasn't a great standard bearer for libertarianism when it was so. That's my disappointment with this election. Forget Trump and forget Hillary, is that this was a chance for a new idea to be born, because so many people are so frustrated with both of them that it's like, oh, there could have been a chance. Not that Gary Johnson was going to be president, but a sane libertarian that had a command of the issues and a clear strategy and all of that, and spoke well and cleanly, I think could have done a lot of good. So that to me is disappointing. But I would love to see the libertarians, and by the way, not just the libertarians, the Green Party, all these other parties. There is nothing in our Constitution that says we have to be a two-party system. There are strengths to having two parties, But there are a lot of weaknesses too. There are plenty of other strong democracies that have a lot of other parties. And look, that comes with its own set of problems too, because then you have to build a coalition, and then you could have a party that has 3 seats in a coalition wield a lot of power because they can topple a government. There are a lot of different things, but we need to understand, and this is why we need to do more about international politics, and why I'll continue to bring on people from all over the world, because we need to understand that this system, our system's still pretty good. America's still pretty good for all our problems, but it can be better. But it's only going to be better by us pushing more ideas out there and letting other things be heard. All right, cool. So reminder, we are raising funds. We're trying to get to 30,000 on Patreon. We're building out our home studio. We're doubling the amount of shows to 2 per week. We're going to start live streaming more. I won't have to do this from my IKEA couch. We'll actually be in the studio once this thing's built out. We got to put lighting in, and we got to air condition and soundproof and do all kinds of drywall and all kinds of stuff. And we're very excited. So it's patreon.com/Rubin Report and rubinreport.com/donate. And if you do 50 on Patreon, I'll Skype with you to thank you after this. And if you do 100 on PayPal, I'll Skype to thank you after this. And we're doing live shout outs for anybody that donates while I'm talking right now.
There's actually, so there's only 3 seats left at the 100 level, which we can tell you what they get at that. There's only 1 seat left to 250 if somebody wants to snap those.
So there's a couple of really cool things that we're doing on Patreon. So the beauty of Patreon is that whatever you give, different levels that you give at, you get different things. So if you give $35, you get the Rubin Report t-shirt, $50, you get the mug, and you're funding the show. Right now we have 3 slots left at $100, and at $100, I do 2 of these. We do 2 group hangouts with 10 people, and we've got people from all over the world that I've been doing them with for months, and sometimes people do it for a few months and then drop out, and that's great. So we've got 3 slots left if you want to become part of our monthly Google Hangout. We only do 20 people can do it. We've got 3 slots left on that, and only 1 slot left on the 250 per month, which is that's just a one-on-one hangout with me. So if you want to just hang out with me, just the 2 of us, we've only got 1 slot left. I wish I could do more of all that stuff. I can't, spend every day talking all day long. But it's been amazing connecting with you guys. I'm talking to people in India, and I'm talking to people in Hungary and in Sweden, and yeah, even in the United States and Canada and whatever else. And it's just it's so cool, and it's humbling, and it's awesome what you guys are doing, and that you're connecting with each other. By the way, one of the things on Patreon, I think it's the $10 reward. You can download the Patreon app here. It's a free app on the iTunes store. And you can download the app, and there's a chat in there. So it's sort of like WhatsApp. And I just jump in there whenever I'm doing my thing. I was in an Uber the other day. I jumped in there, and a whole bunch of people jumped in, and we talk about stuff. And it's very cool. So you can do that.
Here's a question from Patreon. This is from Alex. For such an evidence-based guy, any idea why Sam Harris seems so unconcerned by Hillary's appalling track record? Clearly, neither are good candidates, but some Clinton supporters seem to be deaf, dumb, and blind to her actual disastrous history and obsessed by Trump's clumsy rhetoric. Okay, so that was Alex on Patreon, and the gist of the question was, for such a reasonable guy, why doesn't Sam Harris see more bad in Hillary? Look, I can't speak for Sam. You guys know I hold him in the highest regard I could hold any person. First off, we don't have to see eye to eye on everything. I think I do see more wrong with Hillary than he does. I agree with a lot of his critique of Trump, by the way. But I can disagree with him or not see things exactly the same as him. And guess what? That doesn't mean he's gross and racist, or it doesn't mean he's evil or wants to nuke the Middle East. I think that a lot of people are begrudgingly supporting Hillary because they really don't like Trump. And I think there's a certain amount of people that are begrudgingly supporting Trump because they don't like Hillary. And that's just kind of where we're at. I think there's a fear amongst a certain amount of people that Trump, that what does America look like the next day? Did we just burn down the system? Like, is this now, are all rules off for as whacked out as the system is and the media is and everything else? Like, it does seem like a massive risk. Now, the people that are supporting Trump would say, well, it's going to be better, so go for it. I don't know, but I have no problem, and I assure you that Sam wouldn't have a problem with us not seeing totally eye to eye on that. By the way, I addressed this in the Facebook video we just did, but I'll mention it here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, I said the thing about Gary Johnson, and I wanted to get him to 15% to get some new ideas in the debate. We failed, but I think I did something, or I know that I did something that I believe in, and I think it was a principled thing to do. I'm in California here, so who I vote for ultimately won't matter. So for me, a protest vote of Gary Johnson, just so the number is a little higher,
could make some sense. My feeling, though, for the purposes of the show is that I'm going to continue bringing on people on both sides. I have Hillary Rosen on, who's a big Clinton person, coming on in a couple weeks. This week we have Lawrence Krauss on, who's an astrophysicist who really doesn't like Trump. You guys know we've had some Trump people on, and we'll have more Trump people on, and all over the map. My feeling is that I don't think I'm going to say who I ultimately vote for, because I hope that this show grows enough in the next year that I will get President Clinton or President Trump or whoever it is. And in terms of objectivity, for me to say I'm supporting this person doesn't seem like the best idea. That said, I will continue to hold their feet to the fire no matter what, whoever gets in. And I will continue to bring on people that are both critical of an administration and supportive of administration and all that. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's one of the questions that people ask me the most. Like, at the end of the day, what do I gain? So I'm going to keep doing interviews the way I do. I will try to be as honest and do everything with as much integrity as I have. But ultimately, what do I gain? So right before the day before the election, if I say, well, I'm voting this way, well, now I get X amount of people angry at me. And then when I interview that person, because I do plan on making it happen, because we're building this motherfucker, then it's going to seem like I'm either in the tank for somebody or I was in the tank for the other person and I'm treating this person unfairly. So I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think on that. And maybe you guys can convince me to change my mind. So let me know.
How do you plan on reaching a larger audience? Could this show potentially gain commercial momentum on a more mainstream platform like TV and radio?
So how can you get a bigger audience? Can we get more commercial success and all that? So we've been talking to a couple networks about distribution. One of the things that is really cool about the home studio idea is, because we have our own production company and we'll have our own production facility, is that I could do a show that, and by the way, we can do this show for what it costs us to do one show. Basically, we could do our show for the year for what it costs some cable news shows to do probably an episode of, when you factor in, the salaries that the talent's making and the hosts are making, and when you factor in the amount of people that they hire to move cameras and all this stuff. So we can do this show at a really slim, trim budget, which is really cool. And I assure you that David and Amira and myself are not rolling in the dough because of this. But we're building something that's really nice. So yeah, we've been talking to a couple networks about distribution, meaning that we would do the show as we want. I don't want anyone to have any other control of the show. And I would not sign a deal that would not be transparent about that. But we would do the show, make the package, and then let them distribute it. So we've been talking to a couple networks about that. I had a big call with an agency this week that maybe wants me to do some other stuff for television. So we're figuring out all of those pieces. Like, there's a lot here. Can we grow out a network out of this? Either, as I said earlier, do an MCN, a multi-channel network on YouTube, or can we get this to television in a different way? There's a lot of ways, but I really, really believe that we're just at the beginning. And the interesting thing is that the cool part really is that we've built this through hard work, and this is how you really build an audience. You know what I mean? We didn't do this because we had a big budget. We didn't do this because we bought views or because we had a ton of money to spend on social media advertising. We didn't have any of that. We've done this by work. I tweet too much. That's how we did this. Yeah, what do you got?
This question is from Dr. Christian on Patreon. Would you consider doing a show on how regressive left and kind of alt-right tendencies are taking hold in Europe? What is happening in the US in terms of free speech suppression is now beginning to happen in German campuses and media.
So the question basically was, would you do more on Europe related to the regressive left and the alt-right? I think it's Dr. Christian from Germany, and that some of these ideas are taking root in college campuses there. I mean, I hear this from people all over the world. It's probably, this is what I get emailed about more than anything else, about just that this ideology on both sides, by the way, because, for the alt-right people, and please challenge me on this right now, because I know there's a lot of you in there, in the comment section. For all the people that think that Trump will be the pure answer to the free speech problem, look, this is a guy who does threaten to sue reporters. What do you think will happen when a really good reporter does some investigative research on his administration? Do you think he will be all about free speech then? Now, believe me, I don't know that there's anyone on earth that wants this awful, regressive social justice nonsense crushed more than me. I've spent so much blood, sweat, and tears on this stuff and talking about this stuff. But I don't know that Trump is the answer to that. So he might be the short-term answer in that he would destroy it at the height of its popularity. But in terms of the long-term health of free speech, does President Donald Trump seem like the guy that's going to give us the best free press? I don't know. But by the way, I will also say at the same time that, everyone, I think people are really starting to freak, like that the whole country could spin out of control right now. let's not forget our system is really strong, and our forefathers and our founding fathers were really smart by creating a checks and balances system and a three wings of government, 3 branches of government, so that the executive branch, the presidential branch, is just supposed to sign laws they're supposed to sign bills into law. The legislative branch, the Congress, the Senate is supposed to write them, and the judicial branch is supposed to make sure that those laws are legal. That's how it's all supposed to work. Now it's changing because the executive branch, every president for the past 40 years has taken more and more power from the executive branch. And then when you couple that, we've had a pretty shitty Congress and Senate that has allowed them to do it because they don't do anything themselves. And then you factor in that the next president might be able to put in as many as 4 Supreme Court justices. You could have a real power shift dynamic. So now I'm sort of saying something backwards, because I was saying that our system is strong, it can withstand either one of them, which I do think it can. But in this case, we're also dealing with a situation where a lot of the Supreme Court can be flipped. So there's good arguments on each side. And what I consistently try to do, I had dinner last night with 2 people, I'm not going to mention who they are, but 2 public people who are well-known public people, basically. And one of them is a big Trump person, and one of them is a big Hillary person. And we fully had it out. Like, we were arguing about the whole thing and discussing the whole thing. And we all sat there and had dinner together and had a couple glasses of wine and left on good terms. And we have to remember, November 9th's going to roll around. It's going to be the day after the election, and whatever happened, we're all still going to be Americans. For those of us that are American, I know with a big international audience too. And we have to realize that we have to get along. So we have to, it's one thing. Look, if Trump and Clinton are just going to demonize the fuck out of each other for the next 3 weeks, which it looks like they are, I think that most of us want to be better than that, and I think we can do it, but we got to do it together. All right, let me do a couple shout outs. I want to thank Chad on Patreon. I want to thank Jonathan on Patreon, Andrew on Patreon, and Kirk on Patreon, and Kyle on Patreon, who upped his pledge. So thank you guys. Remember, if you donate $50 on Patreon right now, I'll Skype with you to thank you personally after this. And if you donate $100 on PayPal, I'll thank you on the Skype. And we're trying to hit our 30,000 goal. We are building a home studio. We're doubling content starting next week. You guys did this. You guys absolutely built this thing. I mean, I had no idea. When we launched our Patreon campaign and we left, I left a job. I left a good cushy gig at Aura. They treated me well. David and Amira left. We all quit our jobs. We left our health insurance, all that stuff to try this, and it's worked. And the show has just grown and grown and grown since. And you guys push me to do better work, and I hope I haven't let you down, and I don't intend to let you down. This
is from Joseph on Patreon. You talk a lot about media bias in your posts. Do you think the liberal media is more focused on supporting Clinton or stopping Trump?
I talk a lot about media bias. Do I think that the media is more focused on stopping Trump or supporting Clinton?
The liberal media.
The liberal media. So look, basically speaking, what's considered the mainstream media leans left. So inherently, they're going to like Clinton more than they like Trump. Now, it's funny. I see reporters sometimes say, "Well, I don't support anybody," or "My feelings don't come through in my writing," or "Reporters don't have emotions," or something like that. It's such nonsense. It's such bullshit. And we have to be very aware of that everyone has their own biases and whatever. Like, you guys can ask me anything here, and I will answer it as honestly as I possibly can. But to say that I don't have biases, I try to be as honest as I can. But everyone has their own biases, their own way of looking at the world, all that kind of stuff. So the mainstream media basically leans left. So I think most of the media actually really like Bernie more than anything else. I think there was a real feeling of the Bernie revolution and this movement. And at that time, they were giving Hillary a lot of shit. Like, there was a lot about Wall Street and her bad decisions in Iraq and Libya and things like that. Then, because Trump came in and the media really hates Trump and Trump really hates the media, and he's the true outsider in this situation, they've changed their fire. Now they see one that will keep them sort of safe in their position, and Trump as the outsider. So I do think it's a case now where they hate Trump more than they like Clinton. But again, I'm doing a gross generalization here, because there's all kinds of people in the media, and there are media outlets that lean left and that lean right and that are more centrist, and there are good reporters. I have David Sirota on in a couple, I think, next week, who I think is an extremely good reporter who calls out both sides. And I think he's a bit of a disaffected like me. Get some truth out of it. I wish it was easier. It would be nice if it was easier.
Are you planning to cover some issues and guests which are unique to other countries and not necessarily related to the U.S.?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. Do I plan on covering some things that are not necessarily unique to the United States? You know, I've tried, I think relative to what you see on cable news here, I've brought on a lot of people from different countries to talk about different things. And I had the head of the Assyrian army on, and I've had Tino Sanandaji from Sweden on, and, you know, obviously I had Douglas Murray in the UK, and a whole bunch of different people, and I had Bayan Sami Abdul Rahman from Kurdish regional government, and all kinds of things. We don't do a good job of that in the United States. Everyone's always talking about us, so we stop talking about everybody else. And I think it's one of our problems. We become very myopic that our world, that we rule the universe, and that's not how it should be. So absolutely, you know, we have to sort of do the election thing to a certain degree right now. But I look forward actually to expanding what we're doing beyond that. And that'll also be a nice part of having the studio. We'll be able to do a lot more. I mean, just physically, we can do a lot more. When we hit that, we'll hire an editor, and we'll be able to just churn out that much more content. And the more content we churn out, the more money it'll earn on YouTube, which eventually, hopefully, allows us to hire a lot more people. Like it starts becoming a nice little engine, and you guys are giving us the coal to go with to start it.
This is Felipe on Patreon. Hi, Dave. Has any of your interviews changed the way you used to think about an issue? For example, racism in America, gun control, or climate change?
That's a good one. So Felipe said, did any of my interviewers change my opinions on things? Well, first off, I can definitely say that I've learned from virtually every interview that I've done. I really do try to go into these things with an open mind. You know, sometimes for certain interviews, I feel like I have to be extremely well read on, you know, I've had to read all their books, or I've had to really pay attention to every little thing that they've said. And some people I try to go in with a little less, because then I feel like I can ask the question that the average person might ask so I can learn as much too, right? Let's see, I think there were a couple people that I think I learned particularly from. I'd say the interview with Larry Elder, which isn't one of my best moments actually, but we never edit for content, by the way. You know, we don't edit. The only time we edit will be for like a camera shot, or if we want to get a different reaction shot. But I always tell my guys, don't edit for content. Meaning if somebody makes me look stupid or says something that that isn't right, don't edit that out. I don't mind being shown up or being flawed. I am flawed. But Larry Elder, we had him on, and I don't think he didn't know that much about me at the time. And I think he came in very combative, thinking that I was a liberal and he's a libertarian. And that, you know, or he's not even, he's a libertarian, but he's, you know, more of a conservative, I suppose. And I think he thought that the interview was going to be very combative. And I talked a bit about systemic racism, and he really turned it on me to prove systemic racism, not to prove that racism exists, which nobody, I don't think anyone denies that. But we talked about Black Lives Matter, and I think he laid out things that have now I do see as more true, that sort of fit within this SJW Oppression Olympics thing. And he really called me out on it, and I didn't have good responses. And yeah, we could have edited it out, but I don't mind being shown up, because that's how you learn, right? Like that's exactly how you learn. All right, let me do a couple shout outs. I want to thank Nick on Patreon. Dr. Christian, who I mentioned earlier in Germany, he just upped his Patreon. Mike on Patreon. Digital Stickman Incorporated just donated $100 on PayPal, so I will Skype with you after this. And Benjamin on Patreon. Thank you guys. If this content, look, you know, everyone pays for, you pay for cable or you pay for Netflix or whatever else it is. We got a small team here, but we're building something, as I said earlier, at a fraction of the price of what it costs. You know, for cable news, try to imagine like a show, pick any of these shows. You take Anderson Cooper on CNN, the 8 o'clock show. They got like, you know, probably 10 cameramen, massive overhead in the studio, all of the people behind the scenes and the, you know, janitors and all that stuff. Really, I don't know what it cost them to do one episode of that, but I would venture to say, especially when you factor in Anderson's salary, and, you know, they get cars for all these people, and they probably cater in all this food and all the other stuff, I would venture to say that a year of what we do, truly of what we do, costs less than one episode of some of these cable news shows. That's a more higher end one. Some of them aren't that fancy. But yeah, it's very cool what's going on here. You guys are helping us do this, and I hope that, you know, and I think that you do see this as an investment in yourself. Like if you want these ideas to get out there, if you want the left to be liberal again, if you want to be able to sit, we all have people in our family that we don't agree with politically, and hopefully you don't hate them for it, and you don't defriend them on Facebook and throw food at them across the table. So that's how we should be with our nation. These are our citizens. As I said, on November 9th, we're still all going to be Americans. So we got to separate some of that stuff. And for the people that are watching internationally, it's funny, like, people on one hand, everyone's like sick of hearing about the United States all the time, and then on the other hand, everyone can't stop watching this freaking thing. So it's really something. So okay, quick reset. Remember, it is patreon.com/Rubin Report and rubinreport.com/donate. And let's we're here. We're about to crack 23,000. So let's crack $23,000. We're going to be doing this all week, by the way. I'm going to be doing Facebook Live and YouTube Live videos all week long. Tomorrow we'll do a happy hour with you guys. So if you're around this time, if you want to have a drink with me, and we'll do some shots of Patron when we hit certain marks. Then Wednesday night, of course, is the debate, which the entire world is going to be watching this thing. I mean, I'm guessing probably around 200 million people will be watching. And then we'll do some fun stuff on Thursday and Friday. So we're doing a big push here to build this thing out. I'm meeting with the contractor. We're laying out the blueprints on how we're going to build this whole thing out. There may be a couple weeks when we're building this thing out that we'll be doing a little more on Skype, because Skype we don't have to do exactly from the studio. So while it's under construction, but we'll do all kinds of behind the scenes things so you can see the construction being done. Yeah, so it's really cool what we're doing here. You guys are enabling us to do it. It's awesome, and I truly thank you for it. So all right, we'll knock out a couple other questions, and then I think that's it for today. What do we got?
What do you think of CNN declaring that WikiLeaks is illegal to look at, except for them?
So I don't know if you guys saw this, but Chris Cuomo on CNN basically implied, he might have worded it a little strange, and you guys know I don't like to besmirch everyone's intentions, but he implied that if you look at WikiLeaks, or if you have the WikiLeaks documents, you could be doing something illegal, that they're allowed to as a news organization, but you can't. It seemed like, whether there's some degree of truth or that or not, it seemed like a very strangely chilling tactic to imply, don't tweet about this or don't share it on Facebook or something because the government could come after you. We're allowed to on CNN, which means we'll pick what's important for you to hear. So again, the main issue with this is that it takes an issue that I understand, a lack of trust in media, which is something that a lot of the Trump people have, and in many cases very deservingly so. So imagine if you're the average Trump supporter, you don't trust the media, right? And then Chris Cuomo, whose brother is the Democratic mayor of New York City, who I think is a pretty decent guy, but then you see him saying, no, don't look at the WikiLeaks, basically. We're allowed to, and we'll tell you what to look at. That does feel, it just feels off, right? It just feels slimy and gross. So it's shitty. It's shitty. What do you got?
Let's see. I think it would be cool if your Patreon and PayPal donators could submit potential questions for your interviews.
So
that might be one of the rewards that we're adding to the 50 and up.
That's interesting. So a few of you asked this, and I see a lot of other interviewers do this type of thing where they'll say, I'm interviewing so-and-so, what do you want me to ask them? So I've really tried not to do that because I think it's my job to come up with the right questions to ask people. I think we could do something where on Patreon.
This might be the new $50 bonus segment, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, so we're thinking so here's what we're thinking, that I think we may change some things on Patreon so that at the $50 level, what we would do is, if you donate $50, your questions for the guests get put into a pool that I would answer just for our Patreon bonus segment. So in other words, for the people that are watching the show, normally on YouTube, that's still everything. I'm still doing all the thinking. Don't worry about that. But that you would have an extra bonus if you were part of Patreon to do that. So that's one of the things we're thinking about doing. So I'll keep that in mind. We'll do 2 more questions, and then we're going to be doing this all week. So for any of you that jumped in, I appreciate it. For those of you that are on the fence, go for it. Why not? All right, what do we got?
Let's see. Only 2. I feel like there's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. All right.
Have you been invited to do any other shows or podcasts? I'd really like to listen to you and Joe Rogan on his show. This is from Michael on Patreon.
Michael on Patreon. Have I been on any other podcasts and things? Yeah, you can. If you just look around on YouTube, you'll find some of the other things I'm on. He asked about Rogan specifically. So I was on Rogan about a year ago. And Joe has been great to me because, you know, he has a huge audience. And I think the mark of a truly good person in this space is that he's not afraid to share his audience. You know, some people, I know plenty of people actually that are public people that they don't want to, you know, they don't want to promote other people because they think it's going to like chip away at their audience. Joe is a huge audience. He retweets me all the time. He's been very good to me. I would love to get back on his show before the election, so I will reach out to him. But if you just search Dave Rubin, Joe Rogan, you'll find our 3 hours together, which was extremely cathartic because it was at the beginning of my adventure. We had just launched on Aura. I was just starting to talk about a lot of the regressive left stuff and all that. So it was a really enjoyable. It's 3 hours. It's a long time, but I think you'll enjoy it. And I'd love to have Joe in. He's agreed to do it. It's just, the guy he's doing these 4-hour interviews like every day. He's a busy guy. All right, let's knock out one more. But remember, what we're doing here is we're fundraising to help build our home studio. We will have literally, quite literally. People say I say literally a lot, but I mean this literally. We will have no restrictions. We will be able to tape whenever we want. 3 a.m. Yeah, we can tape. Just walk down the hall. We are creating a home studio. We're trying to hit 30,000 on Patreon. That gives us the monthly budget to go ahead and not only build this thing, but get the electric, the soundproofing, the air conditioning, all of these things. And it's truly our final step towards full independence. And then from there, how do we grow it? Well, maybe we can start growing a network. I've got obviously a whole bunch of YouTubers that I love that I think I can help amplify their voices, that these are voices that are not going to be heard on mainstream. I think there's just so much that we can do by having a home studio, and then maybe we'll distribute the show through other networks. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, and this is it's funny, but we're just at the beginning again. You know, it's like it never stops. All right, so this is your last chance to donate and get a live shout out. While we're doing this right now, it's 5:16 right now according to my clock here, so we'll go to 5:20. Last chance for the live shout outs. I want to thank Eric, who jumped in at $100 on PayPal, so you'll be part of our Google Hangouts, and it'll be very cool. You'll see it's really, really cool because people all over the world connecting. Oh, I'm sorry, that was on PayPal, not on Patreon, but I thank you anyway, and I will thank you on Skype privately. And Shao, who just donated 50 on PayPal, and Nick, who just donated on PayPal, and Benjamin, who just donated on PayPal. So I thank you guys, and you know, you're helping to build something, you know, and on $5, it's the cost of one beer, and you're good to go. Okay, real quick.
This question's from YouTube. Do you ever have return speakers on your channel? I could be mistaken, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone on Rubin Report more than once. Asking
about return speakers. So I've had a couple people. So I've had Gadsad on twice. Sam Harris was on twice. Faisal Saeed Al-Matar was on twice. He's actually in town next week, so maybe I can work out something with him. A couple people. You know, what's good is we can grow this show out in a weird way. I guess it's not a weird way. Maybe it's an obvious way, but I do think that I've become a better interviewer, but I know that I'll still become a better interviewer because a lot of times when you're first sitting down with somebody, you want to kind of get to know them. You have to ask about a lot of history things and about them personally, where my hope is that as we grow this thing out, and especially as the show gets bigger and more people know about me and more people know about the guests that I have on, and we have higher profile people and all that, but then the fluffy stuff, which I try not to focus on, obviously, when I'm doing these interviews, that we'd be able to go right into the meat of everything. So I do like the idea of having repeat people back. And by the way, when you have repeat people, you can see how people have evolved on things. I've certainly evolved on things, and everyone. That's what a thinking, flexible brain should do. All right, cool. So we are going to wrap in 2 minutes. So if you want a live shout out, you got 2 minutes to do it. RubinReport.com/donate or Patreon.com/Rubin Report. A lot of talking today. A lot of talking. Yeah, you guys have helped build something really cool here. I'm really thrilled about it.
This question is also from YouTube. What role do you think the show will take on when election season is over and politics takes a backseat to other issues?
So that's a great question. What do I think will happen with the show when the election's over and politics takes a backseat to other issues? Look, I think that whatever happens, a huge amount of people are engaged right now. So for as shitty as it may feel, like the tenor feels shitty, everyone's angry at everybody, you don't want to talk politics when you're out with friends because everyone's fighting. I think a lot of people after this are going to want the system to be better, and I think that the key will be, and what I'm going to try to do, is to keep people engaged, keep people that are frustrated, whether your candidate is the president or whether your candidate gets crushed or whatever it is. or whether you didn't vote, hopefully you'll vote, even if you're voting for whoever, hopefully you vote more than anything else. There are so many people that are engaged right now. And I think actually the key to this is that for young people, you'll see the direct message that I did, which is coming out on Wednesday for my Lawrence Krauss interview, where I talk about the system a little bit. But one of the things that I said is that imagine if you were a millennial right now, if you're a young person. You know, it's easy to joke about millennials, and I obviously do it related to safe spaces and trigger warnings and all that stuff. But if you were a millennial right now, and this is your first election, and this is the first taste of what you feel like the sense of politics is and the tenor of all this stuff, it would feel pretty shitty. I actually have a lot of sympathy for millennials in that regard. So if you're a millennial or you're 75 years old and you're frustrated by the system, well then, this is your chance to stay engaged. Maybe if we had all been more engaged and we all would have voted more and we all would have demanded that our politicians be better and all of that stuff, maybe if we had all done all that, we wouldn't have ended up with this situation. So that's what I plan on doing. But when the election's over, yeah, then I can shift back and we can do a little more on science, although I'm trying to do, we'll see, we did a lot on science this week, but I'd love to do more futurist stuff. I'd love to talk about international politics more and foreign policy more. I mean, we'll go broad. We'll go broad. And forgetting the election, I mean, the fact is we're going to double the shows immediately to 2 per show, 2 per week, and we're going to be able to do a lot more. So even if it becomes that nobody wins this election, because the rumor that Evan McMullen could win Utah, which would stop either one of them from getting to 270, and it gets kicked back to the Congress, and we have to deal with months of that, I'll still have room to talk about some other stuff. All right, so I think we're going to wrap it. I got just a couple more to give shout outs to.
Let me update this real quick.
All right, so we're just getting our last update here. So I want to thank Daniel on PayPal. I want to thank No Good on Patreon, who just upped from Patreon. He's one of our guys in our Patreon chat that I enjoy talking to, who's held my feet to the fire on a couple issues. And I also want to thank Aaron on Patreon, who just up from 5 to 10. All right, so thank you guys. We're going to do this all week. We'll do the happy hour tomorrow night with some fresh bottle of Patron and probably some beer, and then big debate night on Wednesday, and then we'll go from there.
2 more shout-outs.
Two more real quick. Christopher on PayPal and Michael on PayPal. Thank you guys. You know, I really, truly, not only do I thank you, but I hope you believe that this is an investment in the things that you care about, because, you know, so many people say that they're afraid to, sometimes I get people saying they're afraid to share our videos, or they're afraid to talk about this or that or the other thing. So if you need somebody to be out there fighting for some of these things, I hope I've become one of those voices, and I hope there are many more. If this thing succeeds, if 1,000 other people come out that grow 1,000 other YouTube channels bigger than mine, well, I certainly hope that that will mean that we did something good here. You know what I mean? It really will. Like if 5 years from now, there's people that are way more popular than me doing this, and they put me out of business, well, then maybe it'll be because I sparked some ideas in them. So that's what you guys are helping do, and I appreciate it, and I thank you. And I've been talking for 18 hours consecutively. So it's rubinreport.com/donate, patreon.com/rubinreport. And thank you. And yeah, we'll do it again tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everybody.